Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 118 of the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm Andrew Coates, and I've got my good friend Mike Doehla on today. I just finished recording the last episode that you guys would have heard a week ago with Nick Shaw. So, honestly, that was fun. And the three of us all got to hang out at Raise the Bar in Dallas, a little over a month ago, which was great. And Mike is always one of my favorite conversations. We jam offline. It's like, all right, let's get you back. It's been a while. And I definitely want to jam a little bit on Dr. Trevor Kashey, who I recently had on, who was an unbelievable guest. Guys, go back and listen to that too. But and then when I shared that, you popped up and it was like, hey, that was my first coach. And I was like, I was blown away with the response of just how influential Trevor had been, because I think he's pivoted a little bit. And we talk about that. But in terms of his earlier stuff in the industry, I mean, he coached Krista Scott Dixon, and the guy has a massive footprint on the industry. And up until recently, I actually didn't know this. But anyway, it's great to have you on, and we can talk about all these things. So, how are you today?
Dude, thank you for having me. I'm great. Just got a haircut, so I feel confident to be on camera, which is great. But
I
yeah,
don't use
everything's
the
cool.
videos for these, which I feel bad for. Like maybe this someday I'll go back and be like, all right, but I get overwhelmed with trying to do all of the things, even though I know it's like, hey, you should upload these things
Yeah.
to YouTube. Maybe I'll start again. Who knows?
Dude, it's overwhelming. There's too much to do. So
Yeah, and I'm not retired like you. So I mean, for anybody who's not, uber familiar with you, I mean, you are the founder and architect of Stronger You. You built this incredible coaching company entirely organically through word of mouth and hired a ton of other coaches. And I know at its apex, it was over 100 coaches and thousands upon thousands of clients. And then someone rolled up to you and said, we're going to give you a lot of money to sell this to us. And you said yes. And this is all in your 30s. And let's actually talk about this, because I think this is fun. You did build this massively successful company. And then we have this thing with coaches who struggle with. I definitely want to talk about the struggle to charge enough for their time, the financial success side of stuff, which I think a lot of people are sort of scared of. I think they're scared of being perceived as caring more about the money versus, oh, I just want to help people. And I think there's this sort of theoretical, would never happen in a million years. What would happen if you, quote, won the lottery and you never had to coach anyone ever again because you had that kind of level of financial security? What would you do? Well, that actually kind of happened to you in a sense. So, we'll talk about what's next, but ultimately, I'll just let you grab onto that and go where you want with it, and we'll nudge along the way.
yeah, it's funny because finances are so weird and uncomfortable. And I think it's funny how you called it out at the conference, and a lot of people didn't know who the heck I was. Then they just see this guy that built a company and sold it, and you can't help but wonder if everybody just thought you just wanted money. And it was I think of money as the byproduct of helping a shit ton of people do something. um I don't feel bad about making money. I remember talking to our early coaches because, dude, it was wild when I quit my job and I had to hire people. The members were coming in droves, and coaches were making really good money. And they're like, wow, I'm living the dream, helping a crap ton of people and making a lot of money, and I feel bad about it. And I said, dude, they're better off because they met you. You, as a nutrition coach or trainer or whatever the listener is right now in this industry, you are one of the most important people to your members. And I think about this a lot. And I have so much feedback on this from our members that are other than my wife, my husband, and my kids, the coach is the most important person to me in my life. And I'm like, holy shit. And that's why I get all wound up when I see coaches not able to help people, not sharing the value they provide. And I think that's where we kind of suck as an industry is we don't let people know how freaking awesome it will be to work with us and what we can do for them. I mean, really, it's funny because life coaching is super taboo, right? But it's basically what we do, right? We handle food a lot of time. We handle general movement. We handle active movement. We handle sleep, hydration, stress. Is that not life? Right. And relationships get brought into the mix in those check-ins. So we're kind of cheaper life coaches, but it's amazing what we can do for people. And, it's funny because when I did start, as you know, legit, and I just always have to say, I never had an end game like selling a company in mind. All I wanted to do was quit my boring HR, unfulfilling job and share what I knew. And the beginning of that journey was with Trevor. Trevor was my coach. Found him through Complete Human Performance, Alex Viata. That group, amazing. Trevor was my dude, taught me so much, gave me the nudge to basically say, like, hey, you could probably do nutrition coaching. And that's when I pivoted from my little failure of a garage gym, CrossFit Newburgh, to spending a lot of time on my cell phone taking people's food away, you know?
There's something fundamental in here that I really like to point out. It's we have a right to earn a livelihood. And we have to get over this humility about like, oh, I just want to help people. First of all, you can help a lot more people and stay in this industry long term if you are comfortably paying your bills.
Yep.
And you're not just eking by, but I own a home. I bought my house over 7 years ago. It's a nice piece of security and stability that I have. I was able to set up a home basement gym during the COVID stuff. And I take great pride in having my home. I'm able to have a reliable vehicle. And it put me in a position where, well, I was able to, if I really want something, I don't drive around. I have a Jeep Grand Cherokee. I don't have I don't want a Ferrari or anything super flashy or ostentatious, but I have a comfortable existence. Groceries are a bit more expensive these days. I can still get the things that matter versus I'm thrifty, but I can still get things when I want. I'll go and buy a salmon right now versus like, well, shit, I need to go and, live off of beans or what have you. I hope the point comes across that I work really hard to put myself in a position where I can live comfortably. And here's the second part. There is no retirement plan for us. There just
Right.
isn't, right? So we need to also be making the kind of livelihood income that will set us up for the long run. Also, our bodies are really critical, our physical and mental capability to be able to do our job. So if something happens, one of the reasons why I don't go downhill skiing, right?
Mhm.
You could theoretically, again, being able to work online gives us a little bit more bandwidth there, but we need more of a security net. And I think a lot of people don't look at it through that lens. And I'm going to throw a second point in, and it kind of ties in with Alex Hormozy and some of his messaging. Him and Trevor Cashier are very close. It's to your point earlier on, about charging things. Alex really pushes this idea that the more you charge, the more seriously your clients will take the service. And Alex really pushes it as in you're doing them a service. And whether or not you necessarily agree with that explicitly, there's something important fundamentally to understand there. Whatever happened when you offer a lot of free shit out there, right? Everybody listening. Well, people don't do free shit because they don't value free shit. What happens when you work with discounted clients, when you've lowered your rates to accommodate someone who tried to negotiate price? Those clients are always the biggest fucking pains in the asses ever. They always are a nuisance. What happens to the clients who are happy to pay your top rate? They show up, they execute, they don't create a lot of trouble. They're a joy to spend time with. On average, these things hold out to be true. So, but yet, how many coaches get stuck trying to chase around and cater to and worried about where the next client's coming from and try to cater to the clients that are absolutely draining them? And they're not necessarily bad people. They're just not a good fit for you. One of the smartest moves you can make is to relinquish those clients, stop discounting your services, increase your rates. Your good clients will support you. In fact, my good clients tell me to raise my rates.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you notice that there's a lot of pressure off. You're not worried about where the next client's going to come from. You will naturally, you're just energy, that the way you engage with the world, you will attract. The law of attraction is fucking true. I've lived it. It's true. And better stuff will come your way. It's not instantaneous, but on average, it happens. And this stuff spirals. Was that kind of your experience?
It's hard to say because I was that person that was very cheap when I started. And I like to think of it as subsidized marketing costs. Like a lot of businesses, when they start, they're okay with not being profitable yet. And a lot of people in our industry want to basically get rich the first month they say, I'm a coach. So I think there's some balance there. I like to think that I learned on the job a lot and built that trust early on by not charging a lot.
Mhm.
But as I went, I was not scared to, I mean, I was a little scared to raise prices because you never really know what's going to happen, but people were fine with it. You know, I think negativity bias jumps in down our throats when we raise prices and like two people get upset and then we assume everyone's upset, but things get more expensive. You get better at your job. You have less spots. You're more sought after.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting though, because money is relative. So, you know, if somebody charges 500 a month, maybe to me, that's, you know, not a lot. Maybe to someone else, it's a lot. So you can't really, I don't know if we can really say that the higher amount brings in better quality to a point.
Mhm.
I mean, Peloton, right? We had a ton of Peloton members. Those people would buy $3,000 pieces of equipment, treat them as coat racks, and some of them were a big challenge. Money was not an object to those people, but still, those higher rates didn't bring in always the greatest clients. So I think it depends. I think if you're a young coach, and I say young not as age, but experience, if you're a new coach and you don't have a stacked roster, I think you can be a little more open with pricing, especially if the reason people aren't signing up is because of price, which isn't something they always tell you because there's so much, I don't know, there's everybody's weird about money. Um, so yeah, I kind of agree. I kind of think you have to feel it out and see where it takes you. But I don't think you should start as a new coach charging $1,000 a month. So be careful. And I know that's not what you're saying.
Absolutely. This is something that comes
Yeah,
with time for sure.
yeah,
You do need to learn the lessons and gain the experience. And yeah, you get a broader spectrum of clients. You
right,
learn who you want to work with earlier on when you're charging a lower rate. That's natural.
yeah,
And you're right. I agree. It's a big mistake to charge too high early. Now, there's also a flip side of this too, and it's understanding the anchoring effect.
right,
If you turn around and let's say arbitrary number, you charge $50 an hour, and then you realize that, okay, over time you've got, 20, 30 clients, and you decide, all right, I'm going to raise my rates to $75 an hour because you think that's what you're worth. Well, here's the problem. That's about a 50% increase in your rate. And the people that are already working with you are anchored to $50. Now, making it $75 for a brand new client who's not anchored to your old rate, no problem whatsoever.
right,
But it may not be as simple as just jumping that much that quickly, right? For the existing clientele. Now, if the existing clientele are literally all telling you charge way too little, you're burning out, we care about you, guess what? You're all good.
right.
But so just be aware of anchoring effects. So I think as a brand new coach, don't charge too little either. Don't be so, don't have so much imposter syndrome not to not believe that you can't offer some value. So there is a sweet spot, and at
Right.
least then you can gradually increase. I think the mistake is to not gradually increase at regular intervals, and then you end up kind of behind. So, but understanding the anchoring effect is key. One of the ways around it is, if you decide at a certain point, all right, I know that I should be valued at more than this per hour or per month or whatever. Increase your rate right now, like literally right now,
Yep.
anybody new coming in. Like
I love that. That's what we did. We didn't list prices for the longest time on our site. And the next email, I'm like, okay, I have to increase. And then that was the new price. That was it. And we just did that over the course of 7 years or so.
yeah. And here's how you can actually create a sense of value to your existing clientele. You can say to your existing clientele, because they'll sometimes refer people, say, anybody new coming in is now paying this rate, but I'm grandfathering you for the next 6 months to a year, just as a thank you for your loyalty and patronage. And what it does is it now becomes a sale price for them, which they value. B, it preps them for a future rate increase. And you'd be surprised, some of your clients will literally say, I'd be comfortable paying that now. Right? They
Right.
literally will say that. That's happened to me. But it's a really good strategy. There are people that actually disagree with this. They think that, nope, you just everybody all at one shot, same time, whatever. But I think this strategy works really well to overcome the fear of increasing your prices for coaches, if
Yeah.
that's how you feel. So, and I've done this on a handful of occasions. And I think there have been times where I'm like, all right, my schedule's full. I don't know. I don't know if I can take down this client. And, I've said, all right, in this moment, okay, I'm gonna, increase my rates. And the person doesn't
Right.
even they're like, where do I sign up? And I'm like, okay, that made me feel better. And then from there on, that new price was no big deal whatsoever for me, right? And you
Right.
know, every once in a while, someone's like, okay, well, that's out of my price range. I'm like, all right, cool. I have some really great coaches. I won't negotiate price. That's a big mistake. Really big mistake is I have a few coaches who are awesome, who have similar philosophies. They don't have as much experience as me, and I will happily recommend those people to go train with those coaches. Everybody wins.
Yeah, it's funny because I think everybody wants like the black and white answers of like you should do this, you shouldn't do that. But I always say it depends. And I'm like a weirdo and I don't like to talk about myself as though I'm good at something, but the only thing I thought I was really good at in business was like knowing how everyone would react to what decision I would make.
Mhm.
One being pricing. If, for example, we had a community with tens of thousands of people in it, if I raise prices for everybody, I have a cultural fallout in front of everyone's face.
Mhm.
That is a mistake. So what I would do is I would raise the new people, keep the old people the same. Everybody's happy. Maybe we didn't make as much money, but I don't care because again, one of our big things and our success story was our community and our culture. And I don't like doing things that rock the boat in that sense.
Mhm.
That could be not making as much money as I could on purpose to, I guess, just keep it, you know, homeostasis in there, right?
There's also a couple of things to this too. There's a difference between the company and the individual coach,
Yep.
and that can be nuanced. How do you feel about this thought that in the periodic times when you used to increase the rates, some of the coaches that work for you, because I think the type of coach who self-selects to want to work for a Stronger You or a Macros Inc. or what have you, they're probably on average a little less worried about wanting to go out and aggressively build a personal brand. They're probably not the ones that are more interested in kind of being on the speaking circuit. You get really sweet, amazing people like your Derek Stanleys, right? Is a
Mhm.
great example, or Jason Falcons. And they ultimately went out on their own and
Yep.
they've done really well. They're great guys. They were with us at Raise the Bar. But is there a part of you that made sure that by increasing their rates and therefore compensating them more, you were making sure that they were taken care of when maybe they would have not done it for themselves?
Yes, and that's the hardest thing about running a business is like an individual coaching business, all you're affecting is yourself.
Hmm.
When you're making decisions that affect maybe 100-ish staff and thousands of members, someone is going to lose somewhere. And that's the hardest part. And that's something that I struggled with accepting because early on I was like, no, I could make everybody happy. And that's like coming up in the banking, customer service world, HR, you're like, no, we can make it right. But when you're dealing with volume like that, there could be winners and losers. And almost every time it was a win for everybody. There was always that thought that if we increase and the member load drastically decreases, maybe the company makes as much money, but the individual coach doesn't. And that was always a worry. But luckily, everything always worked out. So, yeah, very lucky.
I included this in my presentation that you reference. There are the people like you, like Nick Shaw, who I was just talking to, like what PN did, what MacroSync do, where the way that you scale your ability to help more people is to hire more coaches.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of net wins there. But you also alluded to a lot of the challenges of managing those people and supporting those people. Is there any insight that you have to coaches to know, all right, is hiring another coach the right move for you? Or is figuring out and building scalable systems kind of more the Don Saladino, Dennis and Kelsey Heenan example that I gave in my presentation. The people who don't necessarily like, even they actually do have a few people that work with them. They also happen to have a spouse who is the entire back end who like is brilliant with their systems. But any insights into, the coaches listening, whether or not they should consider hiring a quote assistant coach, or if it should be leaning into building scalable systems and automate things, for example.
Yeah, it's tough because I think like there were definitely situations where the perception was, hey, like the pizza was 8 slices, now it's 16 slices. I am negatively impacted if you hire another coach. And my whole like super straight up response is everybody knew what my goal was. I want to help a shit ton of people. That means I need more coaches. I'm not here to have a 200 person member base with a few coaches. I want mass scale and I want team players. And if that's not you, then Stronger You is not for you. And that's as simple as it is. But we knew that when we would hire people. Do you want to be a part of a team? Cool, you're in. If you want to be an individual and think a business should run just for your preferences, then this isn't going to be the thing. So I think, yeah, that happens. I do think that you have to figure out what you do want to do, because with more coaches becomes a lot more responsibility and moving parts. If you want to scale and just create programs and applications and things like that, that's also another way to go. And this is something I think about constantly. Like, if I were to get back in the game in a few years, like, what would I do? Would I want to build a coaching team? Would
Mhm.
I just want to be an individual coach? What the hell would I charge at this point? Or do I want to create systems or software or, I don't know, PDFs or programs? I have no idea. But this is what you have to figure out, because people see a Stronger You and they're like, "Ooh, I want to build a Stronger You." And I'm like, first, you never know if that will happen. So don't even plan on it, because I didn't plan on it. It was just, again, a byproduct of doing a lot of the right things and a crap ton of luck. Let's just say what it is. It's kind of annoying in the entrepreneurial world how people can't acknowledge that. It pisses me off. Um, everything is just a cocktail of decisions and circumstance, right?
Anybody listening will hear Nick Shaw mention at least twice the role of luck
Yeah,
in how RP came to be, right? So go back, guys, literally go back and listen to that, because these two episodes will actually complement each other really well.
right. It's a real thing, and people hate it because it means you're not in control. And I say this and it freaks people out, but if you put on your shoe differently today than you do usually do, your entire life is different, because now timing is affected.
Mhm.
Maybe you meet a different person. Maybe you choose a different lunch or make a different decision at work. Your life is different because of every single piece of, you know, every decision you make.
I got a brand new client, and he was telling me about how he met his wife. It was because he walked one way through a market versus around another way, and he saw her there, and they end up talking, and well, now they're married. A really good example in the industry is when I brought our good friend Dean Guido to the 2018 Kansas City Fitness Summit. I chose to go in 2017.
Yep.
Met Derek Stanley and Jed Johnston and a whole bunch of other really great people. Chuck Gross was there, and Robbie Farlow.
I
And,
was there. You just didn't know me. Yeah.
and I didn't
I was
realize
timid back then.
I didn't realize you were there, because I did meet you in 2018, but
Yep.
because I dragged Guido down, and because we had a few of the then Stronger You coaches on our podcast in the interim, he got to know some of them. So came down and then met more. You guys met Mike T. Nelson, and then immediately Guido starts talking with you. Ends up, he still to this day works with Stronger You.
Mm-hmm.
It's provided an incredible livelihood for him. And Dean doesn't have the aspirations of a forward-facing sort of personality or social media in the industry. He has fun on his terms. He's got his little girl, which is why he did step away from the podcast to shit. I mean, it's 2.5 years ago now, but he came down to raise the bar again to hang out with all of us, which was really cool. But Dean's career, being in the right place and aligning with the right people at the right times, but a shit ton of luck. I mean, meeting me the day he did, that he happened to be at Evolve, is what turned into us connecting over online, chatting a lot, asking me to be the podcast host. Who knows how his career life would have turned out very differently if not for those points of luck. And it's true of all of us.
Yep. It's wild. And I want people to acknowledge it. Yes, you worked hard. Yes, you're smart. Yes, you're experienced, whatever. No one says you're not. But if you're making it, like, there's some luck in there. You don't control everything. And that's the issue with like the ego types, right? Like, oh no, I'm a master of my destiny. Well, not really. You just kind of react to whatever's thrown at your way.
I think there are some people in the industry who are such forces of fucking nature and brilliant that somehow, like Dr. Mike Isertel was going, and Lane Norton, they literally were going to be somehow in the positions they're in through, equal parts grit and genius and whatnot, right? But yeah, I think luck's a big thing. Now, the counterpoint to luck is luck only happens when you work really hard to develop the skills and put yourself in the position to benefit from luck, which is, and we've talked a lot about being at these sort of events, which is why I fucking rave about them and I like going to them and I like speaking at them. Yeah, I think these things change careers, but there's so many other things you could work really hard at, put yourself in a position where, for example, again, meeting Don Saladino was a really big thing. So, Don and I become really good friends, hung out with him at a lot of events. But because I had been working very aggressively on writing, I was writing for T Nation, writing for ultimately turned into Muscle and Fitness magazine, a bunch of other things. And then, getting to know Don more and more, Don is like begging me, like, hey, how can I help you? How can I help you? And I'm like, and I hate asking for anything. So I said, well, one of my goals, one of my aspirations is to someday write for Men's Health. He's like, done. And literally emails his pals who are the editors, connects me with those guys. And I got to write a piece for them, which to me is a very meaningful thing. So is that luck? Sure. But Jesus, did I ever put myself in a position? Whereas someone else who has no writing experience, who's never studied it, would not have been able to deliver on something that the editors would have looked at and gone, all right, this is no good. We're not publishing this. Right. So hard work and luck merge.
Yeah. They're buddies, they're teammates. So don't discount either one of them. Don't be such an egomaniac that you can't acknowledge some of the good stuff that happened in your life was random chance.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes a lot of the ego shit is also insecurity anyway. And I think it's,
of course,
people are even themselves acutely aware of the fact that they got very fucking lucky. And they just, like you said, they don't want to admit it. So you alluded to kind of what's next. And this is the fun thing. I think there's $1 million question. And there's some humor in that too.
Back to what I'm not going to claim I could do it again. There's no friggin' way. I don't have the bandwidth. Sure, life is different.
But, now that, let's cut the shit. Money is not an issue. And again, that theoretical question that a lot of trainers, we play around with, what would you do if, money wasn't a concern? What are some of the pathways or ideas that maybe are bubbling in your brain about how to serve people, knowing that you get to do it without needing to worry about how do I pay my mortgage?
Yeah, it's fascinating because I'm like super into like startup culture, small business, like all that stuff. Like I think right now my favorite podcast, no offense to you, is My First Million. Like it's all like startup stuff. It's awesome. So I think like designing a company is cool, but like what would I want to do? Like the biggest thing I miss since selling and stepping away is like community. So I don't know if I would want to be like a one person coach one day. Yeah, I could probably charge a decent amount, have a small roster, low stress, help a bunch of people. But I don't know, maybe I want a team. Do I want to mentor officially people in our industry? I don't know. Like I have this weird thing where like if I don't need the money, I kind of feel bad taking it from someone. But I also think I could do a hell of a lot better of a job if I was like your dude, like, and you talk to me whenever you want. We have meetings, whatever, like take you from point A to point B. That could be fun. Is that a team thing? Or is it like, hey, who's a friggin' computer nerd that can code and create some sort of app that can help people? Or maybe I want to fund something and say, I'll put $500,000 into a business. Let's build a team and do something crazy. Like, so I don't know. Like, I wonder, people looking at me like, what would you do in my situation? Like pretend I wanted to work in the field again. What would I do? I don't know.
And I think the way you just described it, it's like the outlets to help people.
Yep.
Or the way that they would manifest. But at the end of the day, it's about helping people. So I guess you always go back to the question, like, how can I help people in a way that's authentic to me? And you kept saying about team. So I can't see you doing this alone. Like that,
yeah, it's lonely, man. I don't, that's why what a lot of people said, like that left stronger you, like, oh man, I missed that. I missed the team.
And I mean, there's a lot of great people under that umbrella, past and present. And again, a bunch of them all gathered together to go hang out at Raise the Bar. It was really funny to watch Guido and Jeb literally doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu in the hallway. I've got video of this.
Fucking weirdos.
They're hugging each other on the ground, right? And they're best friends, which I love. They're both great humans, two of my really good friends. But they hadn't seen each other in 3 years, which you forget about, because I think they probably talk on screen. I would be shocked if it's not daily.
Yeah.
With the work that they do together. And it was just fun to see. That whole experience was incredible. And I know it's like, hey, it's a ways off before we get, next year. That'll be definitely in February, but I'm already confirmed to return to speak. So guys, put that.
Yeah, I'm going. So I bought my ticket. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I definitely want to be like, if I were to get back like a team of some sort, I just, again, I don't know what that is. I just want to help people live more enjoyable lives. Like that's been my consistent goal for years now. And I hate that a lot of people aren't living a fulfilling life. Like it sucks. And if I have like a way to help that, I feel obligated in a way. So like how can, like if I was a tool to the industry, what would you do with Mike Doehla? Right? How can I better the industry, the people in it, the customers, the staff, whatever? I don't know what that is.
And guys, this is an open question. So
Yeah.
anybody listening, literally message him on his Instagram. Mike literally wants you to message him to explore these conversations. Uh, I just had this chat again with Nick Shaw. There's so much congruence here. And we talked about, and Nick literally said, if you try to be everything to everyone, you are, I can't remember exactly how he said it. It's a classic quote, but you end up being.
Mm-hmm.
Now, RP for sure are very specific in their messaging and serving kind of more of that strength community. He uses the example of they call an app they're working on the hypertrophy app because they literally want to self-select people who knows what the fuck that word means.
Yep. That's so fucking smart because it doesn't like if you don't know what that word is, it's probably not for you. I saw it on Mike's post and I was like, this is gonna be really cool.
And they own that space. They crush on that, right?
Yep.
Now, the question is for you, because I don't see you necessarily being that narrow. How broad do you go?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like I miss helping athletes to grandmas and moms and dads and all that. I'm not a huge fan of the niche stuff, just especially personally. So I don't know, right? I don't know. Like I always joked I'm gonna sleep on someone's couch and prove to them they can lose weight through all their failures. Like because that's such a common belief. People don't think they can lose weight. I want to friggin' live with him for a few weeks and prove it. I don't think my wife and my kids at that time will like that. So that's probably out of the question.
I got an idea we'll chat about afterwards, but I have a feeling that a mastermind call with a select few people it probably is the worst idea in the world, and it may result in just benefiting everybody anyway. Because I think it maybe serves two masters. One, you've several times alluded to, wanting to help other coaches, that mentorship side of stuff. But clearly, you really want to help, and this is actually a bigger conversation too. Is
Yep.
a lot of coaches get into this. I think there was more of a rush a few years ago to get into the mentorship space. And I think a lot of coaches were trying to leave coaching people. Now, I don't know if that trend is quite as hot as it used to be. Maybe it's because literally there's all these like 18-year-old business coaches who
Yep.
obviously they're pumped out in these business coaching mills. They've never worked with anyone. Then they're in your cold DMs. Like fuck those people.
Yeah,
They're
that's probably why I gravitate towards it. Just like the nutrition space, I was sick of all the bullshit. I'm like, dude, it's so much simpler than you think. Let me help you. And that's how I feel about business. And that's why I put myself out there and I talk to probably at least 5 people a week for about an hour just about business shit.
And I mean, the end of the day, because you know so much about this stuff, how do you create a media outlet that shares these lessons? I mean, is it starting a podcast where you bring on, one of your friends who's smart in this industry every week or twice a week, but create that unique experience that's kind of on the mentorship side? And maybe you get such a taste for it, you realize, wait a second, there's something here. Or do you do a general nutrition podcast? Or do you do both? Because both are possible, right? So anyway, lots of ideas. And honestly, this is not just to figure out what Mike Doehla is doing next, but it's also everybody listening to kind of help figure out, all right, well, what are the creative outlets that I can help other people, both in our industry, but also, the consumers, the people we want to help. And these are universal questions. They're not just like, hey, let's figure out what Mike's doing.
Yeah, and maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just what I'm doing, posting random stuff on Instagram, talking to our colleagues, giving advice to whoever wants it, and just living happily ever after. That's okay too. I don't have to like we don't all need to do that, you know.
Here's an interesting lens to look at it through. To what degree do you have an obligation to help? And that's not just you specifically,
Yeah.
but kind of for everybody, right?
Yeah, I feel like I always have this thing like this thought that if you can help someone and you choose not to, you're kind of a like a dickhead. But that's a slippery slope because at a certain point, like you're left with nothing because you gave everything away. So it's hard, right? Like
But does
go
it
ahead.
necessitate that you have to do it for free? No.
No, it doesn't. No, not at all. So you can charge because people are still benefiting way more than the cost of the service. Like there's stronger you members that are like, I would have paid 10 grand for this, how I feel. I'm like, we would have zero customers if that's what we charge. But yeah, and that's why I say, like, if I was to coach, what would I charge someone?
Mm.
Could I probably charge $2,000 a month at this point? Probably. Would I sleep well at night? No, I'm not doing that. That's not, to me, that's not right.
Oh, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
that obligation question is a tricky one because it comes up sometimes. I have for a while been an advocate of using growing a brand and social media being a piece of that brand. But I'm always very clear to say that like no one has the obligation to actually lean into those things. There's also survivorship bias in the sense that I've had a very good time with it, right? It's not necessarily easily replicable to do it the way that I did, and I'm very transparent about the steps, the writing, the travel to events, how the relationships that led to more opportunities, like those things all happened.
And
Again,
that's who you are. And that's like, just sorry to cut you off. Like
yeah.
at the conference, you basically told people like to ask me questions and almost no one did. And it's
Mm.
like, man, if you could have just got me in a corner for 20 minutes, I probably could have answered a lot of your questions for free that could have changed your business. A lot of people hit me up after, and that's just that like shyness. Like I'm a shy dude. Growing up, I was so freaking shy. I still kind of am. But you have to get over this shit because it's going to be the thing that prevents you from succeeding. So walk up to these people, do what Andrew did, and just talk to people. It's that easy. No one's gonna think you're weird. Like just say hi.
Unless you're genuinely really super fucking weird, but
Yeah, like Derek Stanley.
these people we know. Derek will be listening to this for sure. Hi, Derek. Love you, buddy. Um, God, I try to grab my thoughts again. Okay, I'll go back to where I was with this obligation thing. I don't think that everybody necessarily can or should do what I did and what I think a lot of the other people in the industry do. And certainly it reaches a point where it gets very overwhelming to try to do all the things. And I like to be plugged into books like, oh God, my buddy Brad Stulberg, actually got to know the guy. He's author that I had on the podcast, his Practice of Groundedness, which is great, or Chris Bailey's How to Calm Your Mind, or things like Greg McKeon's I'm going through Effortless again, which is his follow-up to Essentialism.
Mm,
Essentialism is a massive classic.
yeah.
And it can be really challenging. And all of them have acknowledged at some point, like especially Chris Bailey, because he's the productivity project guy. It reached a critical point where he was overwhelmed from his travel that he had to write the book about, like how to deal with burnout, basically. So a lot of this theme of burnout is coming around, and I've been experiencing a fair dose of this stuff, living on the edge of this with the travel and trying to do all of the things and coach my in-person and all my online stuff, and then write and serve the publications I'm writing for. And I'm saying no to most of the requests of my time. Now, if someone wants me on the podcast, I can probably make it work. There are things that are important to me, running 2 podcasts, but doing all the things gets really hard. And it is sometimes hard to go, all right, what has to give? And like my sleep doesn't give, my workouts don't give. So unfortunately, what's happened is my personal life gave
Right,
for a
right.
while. So now I'm trying to claw that back a little bit and find more boundaries here. So there have been benefit. I wouldn't trade it if I could go back and not like lean into the social media stuff and like see that grow, because it was still fairly instrumental to all the other things. Although it was buffered by the writing, it was buffered, but the public speaking stuff has helped, but I think that was more of a byproduct of relationships and the following versus a
Right.
driver following directly. Would I go back? No, but I'm actually glad that the pace of the growth has slowed a little. I think impact is still scaling aggressively due to like the public speaking stuff, but just the sheer numbers of social media followers that is slowed down. There's some changes to Instagram. I've been engaging slightly differently, and I'm actually very at peace with that. But I also look at people who, I mean, Jeb is a perfect example of this. My friends like Melody Schoenfeld, Chad Landers, Robert Linkle, there's lots of others. They don't treat their social media as this like hyper engaged scalable entity for brand development. Now, I'm big on the whole idea of like Hormozy talking about the impact you can have if you really scale reach and personal brand. I also don't have $50,000+ per month to invest in doing all of this stuff with a team to massively scale social media on all platforms. Like the
Right.
Hormozys do it well, but literally they have a massive budget for it. I think you can do wonderful things with it, but I also want to warn the coaches too that there are coaches that I think feel like they're missing out because they don't have the social media following, and I think that they crave. I've seen examples of this in our industry. They crave the status that they think comes with this. Be very careful. I talk a lot about status in a lot of my media recently because like I see through the matrix on this stuff. I would say extreme caution with that lens because there are also costs and pitfalls, and quite frankly, there's a lot that goes on with like constantly being interactive with a larger base of people that are literally have direct access to you. So you have to figure out a way. And if you're of the mindset like you are, where you literally will answer every question, you want to help everybody, it's very hard. How do you deal with it when you get to a Jordan Syatt level where you have nearly 1 million Instagram followers plus other platforms, right? You can't. There comes a point where
you're gonna piss people off, and it's like people just need to deal with it. I used to have members here and there say, Mike, you didn't like my post in the group. And I'm like, what? Like, and I was like, dude, I was nuts, right? I was all over the place at all times. And I'm 100% certain that is what built the success, right? In addition to luck. But yeah, it's crazy. The mental like capacity you have to give to these obligations, it's rough, but it's kind of what you have to do if you want to succeed. And that's like, this is like so taboo to talk about, like work-life balance. Like, you don't deserve it yet. You don't deserve it yet. I am sorry. I'm very upfront about it. You need to bust your ass and be everywhere if you want to succeed. You don't have to do it forever.
And I like to point out the people who paid that due and then are really good at the messaging about the boundaries. And like Syatt is really pivoted on this with his family because he's very like, you see his family stuff.
Yeah.
Molly Galbraith absolutely does a great job of this. Brett Bartholomew does a really wonderful job about this. John Berardi, a lot of his stuff, he's very clear in his boundaries and and how he operates and how he responds to saying yes to anything. Says no to
and
all.
that brings up a good point is new coaches and younger coaches, remember, like, think about all the people Andrew just named. It's all people that already did the thing. If you found them 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, they're grinding their asses off. So only look at if you only look at the timestamp of now, you're going to be misled. And I tell people this all the time. If you come across me now, don't look at what I do now and think that built the success. Rewind to 2015, 2016, 2017. That's when we had that crazy growth, right? That's when things were nuts.
There's a quote from a friend of mine, and I've seen different iterations of it, but I love it. There's definitely like all this talk about, burnout. You get newer coaches worried about, they don't want to work too much, right? They're worried about burnout. And my friend says, don't worry about burnout. Worry about not starving, right?
Yeah.
I do think that, am I telling people, hey, you need to like literally be dancing on the edges of burnout and you have to, fuck no, like God, no. I think if you're alert to that stuff early on, you can actually get good at some of the boundaries. But I echo you. It's like, you got to be willing to work really hard. In our industry, there is no such thing as work-life balance. Work is life. I mean, yes, we definitely have to make sure that we are alert to the things that are important and create time for them. But this is not a traditional 9 to 5. And in fact, very few careers are anymore. So it's a very different dynamic. And I do think that, I mean, for me, I'm comfortable with the fact that I got up to the bleeding edge of this stuff, and I'm aggressively sort of figuring these things out, and you won't get it right all the time. I mean, you definitely don't want to go over that edge too far.
Right.
I promise you, right? And you have to be prepared to turn around and say no, even if it's sometimes, a really important skill is being able to without making it flowery, turn around and say no to stuff. And maybe even I said yes to it. I can think of a recent example where I sort of committed to a project, and I did, it's a smaller project, but I kind of did what I would think with half of it in the framework. And then the other person involved was someone who I was like sort of throwing a bone to help support. But that person delivered something that was very different than what the project needed. It was like two different projects. And so my response to that was, hey, you need to go and redo this. Again, here are the parameters, here are the examples, here's how I wanted it. But I looked at it and I could have gone in and like redone it all, but it would actually more than double the amount of work. And so immediately I got stressed looking at it because I had so much else to do. This is supposed to be something that here, do it the way it was supposed to be done. It's a layup, and then hey, everybody wins. But I'm more than comfortable walking away from that project because maybe it was incongruent, maybe it was incompatible, but ultimately it wasn't done in the way that I could look at it and go, hey, this is great, we can ship this. And I'm very comfortable scrapping it because to me, I would have to dump a whole lot more time and effort into getting it where I needed it. Do I need the other individual's expertise? Absolutely, I did. But I think that the way that it was done was still not congruent with the end product. And I'm being vague here because I don't want to give away just who and what it was.
No, I get you, man.
But
It makes total sense.
But it ultimately, in its current stage, it didn't work. And I was comfortable being blunt and saying, here, if you can do this, if you can do this, if you go back and you can change all this stuff, and then we can go forward this. Otherwise, this is not a priority for me.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a lot of people that would have given half a week to this project that still would have been upset the whole time.
Yeah, I got too many other things I'm juggling. I've gotten behind on the podcast. Now I really made a point of getting a bunch of messages out to people I wanted on. I've got some incredible guests lined up. Sometimes scheduling gets screwed up, but I got Ebenezer Samuel. He's one of the Men's Health. He's a senior editor at Men's Health. I've got Yves Guzman, who was one of the speakers at the Real Coaches Summit, our buddy Aram's event. Yves actually came and hung out at Raise the Bar. And I've got a bunch more lined up, and I'm actually really excited to have everybody on. So I'm back on track. And my chat with Nick earlier was fun. This is fun. And I'm reading this book again, Effortless by Greg McKeown. And it's funny because Essentialism is such a classic that Effortless felt like a real letdown. But I teased something out early, and it's like, okay, there's the resistance to these things. Well, okay, make them fun. And it's like, anytime that I've struggled with the podcast and its consistency, anybody who's doing one, maybe you'll relate, it got away from being as fun. But when I'm reminded of just having these fun conversations with friends in the industry, which is one of the reasons why Trevor Cash was, most of the episodes I had for a while have been great, but like having Trevor on, Trevor and I get along so well. He's a lot of fun. Getting Nick on was great. I was excited to have you on. I'm excited for the next few. And it's like, wait a minute, I can do this, even though I don't have a lot of scheduling availability to put it in. Hey, if I throw enough flyers out to enough people who fit it's a limited criteria who I want to have on this podcast. But if I get them out enough, then I can get people booked up in advance, and then all of a sudden I'm not missing a lot of weeks.
And you talk about how you're giving up like personal time for like business success and stuff. Like this is kind of personal time too. Like you're just talking to a bunch of friends and having a good time. Like it's just recorded.
And exactly. And that's a great way to look at it. And this is where I tell a lot of coaches, like having a podcast is actually one of the best things you could do. There are more podcasts than ever, some get great circulation. Yeah. If anything, like, listenership is actually down from like the heights peak of when like Dean and I were one of the only games in town early on.
There's so many, and it's okay, but because you don't have to just use it to get clients or something. You can, like, the best thing about conversations I have with colleagues is like I'm reminded of like certain processes or methods of like growing a business, and it's like really cool to bubble that stuff up. So if you have a podcast and only 12 people listen, like who cares? You're still getting something from it. And don't forget that, because that stuff helps with burnout. If you find little wins here and there, you will be less likely to get burnt out. And that's where, like, how I stayed on top of things, because every day I would find some wins. Maybe it was members helped or coaches hired or member satisfaction or revenue or just cool comments in the community. Like there's so many little wins that you can find in your business. It's not just the number of people that are on your roster. Like there's so much stuff.
Yeah. And if anyone listening who has a podcast, yes, it's great to get like, quote, big names in the industry. Like Jordan Site recently said, he's been doing so many podcasts like every day for years. He's done. He's like literally once he's hit a certain point, he's going to stop doing them. He's earned that right. John Goodman is very, very picky about when he does podcasts. He will go in a mode where, like, if I message John, like, hey, come on the podcast, he'll be like, no. Like,
And he's straight up, like, he's like the master of saying no.
He's great at this stuff. Another good example of someone who, like, just family's on display a lot. He's very clear on what fits his day versus, doesn't fit his day.
Yeah.
And so I think the real value here is take a look around at the coaches who are on the same journey. Because there's a whole bunch of people who are doing really well who I kind of met. Jeb is a good example. Guido is a good example. Derek's a good example. But there's plenty more. I think of you as well in that light, where we met earlier in this stuff and everybody grew together. But those are the people who are doing cool stuff, especially the people who you're interacting with on social media, but you're also meeting at these events and hanging out with at these events. Those are the people you need to get on the podcast, because they're the kindred spirits who you guys are going to inspire each other. You're going to learn from each other. You're going to get ideas about how to do things. Like, man, I didn't think about that at all. It'll break you out of these little boxes. If you came up through a commercial gym like I did, you get really in a rigid box about how your business is supposed to work.
There's so many people to look to, and it doesn't just have to be people in the industry, because, like, again, you have to be kind of careful about that, because then you just accidentally copy each other. And you never know if someone's succeeding by their social media. So make sure, if you're imitating someone, and I use that in a good way, not in like a copycat way, make sure they're doing things right, because there's a lot of polished stuff out there that looks like it works that is falling flat.
Yeah, be very careful about comparing yourself to what you think is going on with someone else's work.
Yeah.
Mike, tell people where they can find you and go ask you questions.
Instagram at Mike Doehla. I'm sure you'll figure out how to spell it from Andrew's little intro there. But yeah, that's how you can find me. Ask me questions if you have, anything I can help with. Someone that built a business on a cell phone and ended up selling it and helping a shit ton of people. I have a lot of thoughts in my head that can maybe help you in some way.
Thank you. Everybody listening, share this with someone. If there's another coach that you guys jam on a regular basis, good friend, share my podcast with them. I definitely want to have more people listen. I do love doing this. I know I do have these little gaps sometimes where just everything gets overwhelming, especially if I got a bunch of travel and speaking engagements. But this is something that I realize it's super valuable, and I do enjoy it, like we talked about. So, it's the whole, like, who does this? Half the big podcasts, like, they don't advertise or what have you. It's like, this is how we get by. We don't charge, you don't pay for podcasts, and you pay with your time, right? I have to earn your time all the time. But give me a review, share it with someone, help me grow this so I can reach more people. And go and follow Mike, go ask him questions, just learn from what he's doing. And I know I push this stuff all the time, but come and hang out at a fitness conference event somewhere. I promise it'll do great things. I'm going to be getting more information out about my event in October 13th and 14th. We're working on venue. If you want to go to my Facebook, I have recently announced the lineup. It's fucking epic. Or you can message me and I will tell you directly what the lineup is. And a lot of our friends are going to be there. So guys, thanks for tuning in again. And I'll bring you another great episode next week. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.